Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and it's a pretty bad day for Microsoft, pretty bad day for Xbox, and an even worse day for people who love Halo. Like me, ladies and gentlemen, if it's something about the world of video gaming, you gotta understand something that's very important for video games. The economy. Now, of course, a lot of the big companies in the world are actually facing a slump, and companies like Microsoft have to fire people. About 10,000 individuals have been fired, which is around 5% of Microsoft's staff. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, this comes at the heel of, again, the economy being in the place that it is. And of course, Microsoft always has their fingers dipped into a billion different pies. Some of those pies don't make as much money as other pies. And at this point, Microsoft is looking into all of their pies and culling the fat, so to speak. So of course, Satya Nadella, who's the CEO of Microsoft, says, "We're living through times of significant change, and as I meet with customers and partners, a few things are clear. First, we saw customers accelerate their digital spend during the pandemic, and now we see them optimize their digital spend to do more with less. We're also seeing organizations in every industry and geography exercise caution, as some parts of the world are in a recession. So of course, to align our cost structure with our revenue and where we see customer demand, we are making the changes that will reduce in the reduction of our overall workforce by 10,000 jobs. So of course, they're actually eliminating a fair amount of jobs right here, as they've said. Now, of course, this is across all of Microsoft, okay? So it's not just their gaming division, it's every division. But of course, it seems like one of their divisions was hit the hardest out of them all. One of them being 343 Industries, which apparently lost somewhere around like 100-ish something people. Of course, Microsoft doesn't exactly have specific numbers, but that was the one company that was hit the hardest. Now, of course, it wasn't just 343 that was spanked. It was also the Coalition, or really every other branch of gaming that they have. So, of course, even in this case, when you look at it, it's not looking that pretty. Now, of course, Microsoft still hasn't stopped the purchase of Activision Blizzard. Now, the reason I'm making this video is not just because jobs have been cut. Every day that I am alive and breathing on this earth, this video gets delayed. It's literally about Microsoft's purchase of Activision Blizzard. This has been going on for about a year at this point, and it's become one of those things that has actually brought the resurgence of Microsoft and their antitrust situations. If you're as old as I am, you know that Microsoft is a truly evil company when it comes to competition. Back in the days of early 90s, that 2000s era, they considered Linux to be used by communists, okay? It was an evil that was taking over the computing sphere. These were the people that were all about the browser wars, okay? And making sure that in any way possible, nobody was firing up no Netscape Navigator, no Furry Fox, no Opera. If you weren't exploring the internet the right way, God's way, then you weren't meant to be doing it right. Now, of course, Microsoft has had a pretty nasty history with antitrust, and it's literally in the last two decades really, that they've kind of just been sort of the second banana to a lot of the other big companies. Whether you're Apple, Google, whatever, you're pretty much called upon by the government to be the one person breaking competition laws, antitrust issues. But Microsoft, who used to be the worst offender in the situation, is kind of just chilling back. Now that is up until the Xbox division decided to buy as many developers and publishers as they absolutely could. Remember when they bought ZeniMax? Yeah, we were wondering what else was the next big purchase. Then, of course, it was Activision Blizzard. And to remind you how big Activision Blizzard is, that doesn't mean just Call of Duty, which is one of the most famous franchises of all time. That also includes franchises like Diablo, for instance, Overwatch, you name it, okay? This is a bunch of franchises they're buying, and it's a completely amazing notch on their belt. We're talking about $70 billion spent pretty much right. Now, it's because of these spends, and it's because of Microsoft's aggressive spend right over here, that you can probably see why they're culling the fat, so to speak. To them, 10,000 less employees who they probably figured out weren't adding too much to their company anyways, they decided to use that money, save it, and buy these projects and properties as well. Now, the reason the Activision Blizzard purchase is so wild is for this whole year, okay? You've got companies like Sony. You've got regulators in the US, the UK, many parts of the world. Companies like Nvidia jumping in, offering their 2 cents, trying to make sure this deal goes through, or it doesn't, Microsoft is literally fighting the entire corporate and tech world right now, the gaming world, to make sure this purchase actually goes through. Now, of course, for a lot of people who are considering it pretty hypocritical that they're about to buy $70 billion worth of an entire gaming company, but at the same time putting 10,000 people out of a job, I'm sad to say that's unfortunately how business goes for some people as ruthless as Microsoft, ladies and gentlemen. Now, for the Halo community out there, sadly, Halo Infinite has not done so well. Even with Forge and a bunch of stuff that they've been adding, it's just not there at all for anybody. Halo as a community, Halo as a game franchise is unfortunately taking like hit after hit. Look, unless you're like Doom, Gears of War, Forza, at least you get a few good games that come out every other year. With Halo, we literally have gotten nothing good. I'm not even joking, since Halo 5 Guardians, okay? 343 Industries, if they've been hit hard, makes about as much sense as you can imagine. They have time and time proven again that when they work on a Halo game, they are not putting the same level and love into it as Bungie once did. So obviously with Halo Infinite, it hasn't exactly been doing the best. It's not a dead game. Like, it's not as if logging into Halo Infinite doesn't get you any players. Obviously, there are people playing Halo Infinite. Is it the number that I assume Microsoft hoped for? Probably not, given the fact that the game launched in such a lackluster state, and literally only until very, very recently, I'm saying like a month and a half ago, they got things like Forge working, where you could actually have custom games browsing, actual new content added to the game that was going to add some fun to it. But even that, ladies and gentlemen, is still not as complete of a Halo package as we once used to get. So obviously Halo Infinite, which was a game that was literally designed to be played for like 10 years. This is a game that had a 10-year plan. Literally one of the most strongest MVPs on the entire project, Joseph Staten, actually ended up leaving. He was supposed to help steer Halo Infinite, but unfortunately he's went back to Xbox Publishing. I think they've realized that Halo Infinite is just not worth saving as much as you would imagine. With a game that has a live service component that is without a doubt the biggest joke in the live service community, given the fact that content is not just drip fed, it's barely fed down the pipeline. Obviously, for anybody who's into the Halo universe, Halo fan base, this is just one of those things where I don't think Halo Infinite really has too much long left into it. If you just look into Microsoft's view on game development, it's incredibly unhealthy too. So for instance, Joe Staten, who basically joined 343, left Halo Infinite, to go back to Xbox Publishing, which again is not good for 343 entirely. But even looking into like the hiring practices, it seems like 343, a lot of the employees there, the large chunk, were on contracts and couldn't stay longer than 18 months. This is actually known about a year ago, like we were talking about this for a while. But of course, this is not good for any company, period. If you think that you're going to employ people for 18 months and then tell them for 6 months we can't really keep you on these weird, like, temporary contracts, if you will, then that's not going to allow... First off, these people aren't incentivized to work because they know that they don't have any actual growth of the company. And when it comes to game development, software-wise, it's an incredibly complex piece of software designing, software programming. And this is why companies like Santa Monica Studios and Rockstar Games have had people working for a fair bit of time, developing not only their engines, but like the technologies that allow those engines to actually create these game worlds in such an immersive manner. I think what Microsoft's plan is, like, forget making a good game like God of War, right? Like something that people will remember for years on end, something that will win multiple awards and is going to be like an industry trendsetter. No, for Microsoft, it's like, hey, we've got these big IPs like Halo and Gears of War and Forza. Let's just make a game that's a cool service and then move on to the next one. Churn these things out like no tomorrow. And if one catches on, well, we'll be making more money than hopefully 10 big AAA games combined. Now, of course, the reality is Microsoft really doesn't have that many great games that somebody can dig out and remember, right? For instance, if you look at it, Halo, we haven't had a good game since, I would say, Halo Reach, right? Halo 4 was even rocky at best. Gears of War, yeah, 4 and 5 were decent games. I didn't play Tactics, but they're not necessarily setting the world on fire. You've got Forza games, which, yeah, they're cool when they come out, and we forget about the old one literally a year after, once they release a new Horizon game or a new Motorsport game. And even when it comes to single-player titles, the next big game I'm looking forward to is Starfield. And since then, Microsoft has not made any, like, big, massive AAA a game that is to be remembered. And that's one of the big problems. Even the game that came close, Crackdown, which had like that amazing burn the city down to the ground technology, was absolutely cut down, downgraded, pared back into some PlayStation 2 era open world title. So yeah, Microsoft doesn't really care about making the video games, and that care shows real well into the actual people buying the game, because I'm not incentivized to go and spend $60 on a Microsoft game when I know that Nintendo and Sony and various other companies from the indie variety are doing what they do just a million times better and with more soul put into it. And the way that they do their hiring practices for Microsoft studios in general is so unhealthy, especially for people working in the business, that of course talented individuals are probably incentivized not to go there. Why waste time at Microsoft if you've already got the credentials to show? Just go work somewhere where you're more respected and you have more verticality to go into. This is disgusting. And honestly, I hope that Halo as a franchise really doesn't get the actual end. I hope it doesn't get shelved by Microsoft, to be honest with you. I really hope that if Halo is to continue, Microsoft actually looks into this even more and maybe reboots the franchise, or hopefully restructures 343 Industries to the point where we can actually have a proper development team that can work on creating a super amazing flagship Halo title. It's wild to think that one of the best franchises, the absolute what put Xbox on the map, like this is the Mario for Xbox. I would say this is like what PlayStation always changes its franchises every year, but I would say it's the God of War for PlayStation, the God of War for Xbox. Halo is one of those franchises that needs an absolute banger. At this point, if one of the best pieces of Halo material for me was Halo Wars 2 in the last few years, that's not a good sign. The spin-off should not be better than the mainline franchise. And that's one of the things that hopefully may be good that comes out of it. Maybe there is some restructuring in progress. Maybe Microsoft looks into their gaming division and fixes some things up. Maybe. But of course, unfortunately, 10,000 jobs have been cut off, and a lot of them were at Xbox. Not all of them, obviously, but a good chunk of them were actual developers, people working in the gaming divisions, that have lost their jobs. Hopefully they find their footing somewhere else. But yeah, given the fact that Microsoft hasn't exactly been doing so well like the rest of the companies out there, they're more focused on buying a bunch of, IPs and products and companies that they can add to Game Pass and their belt, versus actually, looking at these companies, I guess, in the best way possible. A lot of these employees have been dropped off, and that's pretty much how it goes, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to really talk about, Xbox and Microsoft. Rough day, man. Rough day for the people working on those companies. Rough day. And honestly, it's a pretty unclear day for anybody who's that into Halo like I am to see what the future of this franchise is, given that literally in the last few days, 343 Industries has had the biggest shakeup ever imaginable. But yeah, let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am